What is going on, boys? We are here for the card we've all been waiting for now for months and months and months. UFC 280 taking place in Abu Dhabi, boys. We're here. We're ready. Gonna make some money. We've cashed like what? 5 straight KP Green Nights, Kev.
Yeah, 5 straight. Plan on making it 6. Nothing locked in for the King's Purse this week, but man, cannot wait to break down this card with you guys.
Man, we've been on a little bit of a heater, and I think we're gonna keep it rolling here. Crazy card, top to bottom. So, I know we've got some, opinion differences between us, but I think we'll, like we always do, we'll find a couple spots to make it a profitable one, like usual.
Yeah, I mean, just so many spots that we like here. Just this main card alone, stacked. We had to get through last week's stinker, I guess we'll call it, to get through to this one, But well worth the wait. I think that we got a 10 a.m. Eastern start here, so probably no spaces on our end. We're not getting up that early to do these. So make sure you tune into this episode. You get these main card locks. And then, as always, be in our Discord throughout the fights. We'll get the picks going in there. And, without wasting any further time, I'm too excited about this. So let's just get into this first fight of the night here on the main card. Katlyn Chookagian, plus 170, taking on the French phenom Manon Fiorot at minus 200. Fiorot's one of those prospects, right? We see her moving up the ranks pretty quickly. Has a big matchup here against someone in Chookagian who really has played the role of gatekeeper very well. I mean, she's beaten everybody not named like Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, I was going to say Shevchenko, but she beat Antonina Shevchenko, right? So I can't even just use that. But she's coming into this one, the underdog, pretty sizable underdog against Fiorot, who, as I mentioned, high value prospect from the area of France. Missed that UFC Paris card, right? Put her on this one because of complications with this fight. But Kev, I know you have a very strong opinion on this one, and I think it might be opposite of Dan and myself. So since you're in enemy territory, you'll start this one off for us.
Thank you so much. How kind of you, my man. Look, I mean, this is such a banger of a fight. One thing that I'll start off by saying about Chookagian is, the boxing is incredibly crisp. The IQ is there. It just seems like she knows where to be at the right time. For the most part, she doesn't necessarily put herself in that much danger. On the flip side, when it comes to taking this fight to the mat, she struggles in the UFC. I want to clear something up real quick. So when we're talking about poor grappling, that also includes wrestling as well. So not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the mat, not just submission, attempts and this and that, but I'm talking about pure wrestling. I think Chookagian really lacks. I just look at a girl in Chookagian who I look at her physique and she kind of has like these like chicken legs per se. Like you look at like the way she's built, and I just think that Fiorot is going to be able to take her down with ease. I mean, Fiorot has that judo toss in her back pocket. I mean, we saw Chookagian get absolutely bodied by that exact same move in previous fights. And, look, Manon Fiorot, I mean, is truly no joke. I mean, if we're talking about the brightest prospect in women's mixed martial arts on the come up, I mean, I can't name another prospect brighter than Manon here. Just an incredible Muay Thai. I really just believe that Fiorot is going to take her down with ease. I really just believe it. I feel like if Chookagian has a chance here, it's just going to be one of those controversial, greasy split decisions. I already have 2.85 units locked in at Fiorot at minus 190, and I'm planning on hedging it. I don't know if it's a hedge, but I was planning on playing the by split decision. Just generally speaking, it's got to be in the 4-1 plus 350, 4-1 range. I think that's a good look just to be safe if it does go to split and Chookagian does somehow pull it out of her pocket. But, look, I just think this is Fiorot's time. I respect Chookagian. I respect, the gym she comes out of. But I just don't think that she matches up too well with Fiorot here. I just don't think this is a good matchup for her. So I love the French woman to get the job done here by decision.
You would think that I'd be all over Fiorot with, rocking the Paris Jordan sweater and whatnot. But yeah, I got to side with Chookagian on this one, Kev. And I love the conviction on your side, man. But it's a classic kind of Chookagian spot that we've seen in the past. And, You know what I love? I love hearing how everyone's saying that Fiorot is this incredible prospect, and she is. Don't get me wrong, but they're saying that just because she's, we've only recently, kind of seen her. She's only had like I think 3 or 4 fights in the UFC. She's 32. Chikagian's 33, and she's been in the UFC way, way longer. So you know, I think when you give it the eye test, I think you lean Fiorot. You have to lean Fiorot. I mean, look at her. She's jacked. She's physical, and she seems to have been able to, really, parlay that physicality into a nice little win streak. She's overpowered every single fighter that she's faced in there. But I think her last fight, what I'll typically see is that when I see someone that's so heavily favored, you got to see how they perform relative to the market. And in that last fight, I thought that she underperformed. She won. She was supposed to win, so she did what she had to do. But I don't think in the convincing fashion that I would have liked to see. And Chookagian has again very solid jiu-jitsu. Renzo Gracie black belt. She's coached by Mark Henry, so that they're from a game plan perspective, they're gonna come in and try and own in on the holes that they see in Fiorot's game. I just feel like that being the tallest fighter that Fiorot has faced, I think Chookagian's going to be able to use that T kick up the middle to frustrate Fiorot. She likes to blitz in with a 3-4 punch kind of karate style combination, and I think that T kick up the middle is gonna disrupt that momentum. And we can very easily see a sweaty Chookagian 3-round decision. And the thing is, too, is that if Chookagian can find Fiorot's back, I mean, I think she can actually finish her. That length on the ground is going to pose problems that Fiorot hasn't faced yet on the ground in the UFC. So, because of that, I lean Chookagian. No official play here, but I'll definitely be having something on Chookagian in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I feel similar to you, Dan. We spoke about this the other day, right? How just thinking back about Fiorot's fight against Mayra Bueno Silva, right? I just remember sitting there watching that, holding a Fiorot ticket and thinking that same thought. Like, she's a huge favorite. You should expect her to go out there and dominate. And she didn't perform to her price tag. And then she fought Jennifer Maia. And it's almost like a similar situation, right? Where she kind of, got into this habit of finishing all her opponents. I think up until that Bueno Silva fight, she had finished like 6 of 7 wins, all by knockout. And, I feel like if you could withstand some of her early onslaught and power, then it kind of like weighs on her confidence a little bit. And then she gets a little bit labored because then she's really trying to throw to get you out of there. And I think we can all agree that, Fiorot has a huge power edge in this fight. Like, she has the strength advantage as well. Like, she's going to be the physical brute enforcer in the octagon. I think we can all agree on that. But I said this to you guys the other day. I think Chookagian has the advantage everywhere else, though, right? I mean, I feel like Chook, whether it be just standing on the feet, right? I think that she's a more versatile attack. I think, in a 3-round fight, she's a great point fighter, staying out of range of her opponent's strikes, landing some of her own. I do agree with you, Kev. I think Fiorot can land takedowns on Chookagian, right? But at minus 200, you'd hope that's the case, right? I mean, Fiorot really is naturally going to have her edge on the feet. And I think in this fight, the edge isn't necessarily there, and you're claiming the edge is going to be in the grappling department. But her ability to get the fight to the mat, yeah, she has the advantage there. But once it's on the mat, she almost uses that time on top to gain her breath. It's not necessarily like vicious ground and pound. She's not looking for subs. She's not really trying to advance positions when she gets this fight to the mat. And then I mentioned this to you, Dan, because obviously you're the brown belt of the group. You're the grappling aficionado. I noticed in Fiorot's fights, when she gets top position and she's gassed in that second and third round, she's putting a lot of weight on her hands that are face down on the mat, essentially. And someone like Chookagian, and we just saw it in her last fight against Amanda Ribas, who's a far better jiu-jitsu practitioner than Fiorot. She's attempting armbar attempts. She's attempting triangles from bottom. So we know that Chookagian has that threat of submission off her back. And just seeing Fiorot being so heavy on her hands on the mat, it just gives you, kind of like, in essence, maybe Chookagian could land an armbar in this fight. Maybe she could get up from back just, by threatening submissions and just continually getting up, making Fiorot work, get her tired. I just feel like at plus 170, you have someone in Chookagian who's been in this spot time and time again. I mean, the girl's 18-4, right? In one of the most vicious women's divisions in the entire world, if not the vicious, right? I mean, she lost to who? Andrade, Valentina Shevchenko. She lost to Jessica Eye in a split decision way back. and Liz Carmouche 6 years ago on like her second fight in the UFC. So I feel Chookagian doesn't get the respect that she deserves. I know we talk about women's MMA fights on here a lot, especially recently so with back-to-back main events being women's MMA fights. But this is a scenario where you just have a fighter being overvalued by the market, and then, the people blindly follow the favorite tag because they think, she should justifiably be a minus 350 favorite, Firo, in the eyes of a lot of people. But I feel as if you have a pulse on this women's flyweight division, Katlyn Chookagian's name has always been hovering at the top, and seeing her at plus money against someone like Firo, who, for the most part is one-dimensional, it's kind of tasty to get behind. So I'll definitely be on Chook here at plus money. I think if you're going to play the plus money, you might as well, squeeze a little extra juice out of it and get like plus 240 by decision. I know I mentioned that a submission threat is lively. I don't know if she'll necessarily sink it in, but, we see Chook go out there and win by decision time and time again. So plus 240 seems likely here.
Yeah, I just want to quickly comment on just that piece that you mentioned of, Firo's putting her hands on the mat. And you're absolutely right. And, when I was talking about the length of Chookagian, that is going to help her a lot find those angles that she needs to open up like the triangles and the arm bars. Those are going to be there for her if Firo decides to, kind of chill in her guard and plant her hands on the mat. I mean, she's going to grab an overhook, and she's got those long legs that she's just going to be able to flip over the shoulder and lock something in. I can absolutely see a Chookagian submission here. Probably won't bet it, but wouldn't surprise me at all.
That's bold, but I dig it. I mean, and like for the record, man, I have so much respect for Chookagian, right? I mean, since she, lost her contention at the belt, I mean, she's won 5 of 6. She's looked incredibly well. It seems like you're really getting the best version of Chookagian time in and time out. And this is going to be such a fun one, guys. I cannot wait to open up this main card with this fight.
Yeah, for sure. And, just to mention, a lot of people probably look at Chookagian and look at her last fight against Amanda Hebos, right? I personally thought she lost that fight. So I see a lot of people, why they would want to fade her in this spot because, they think she's really coming off a losing fight. So, I could see that angle on it. But, man, this is just a good matchup. I'm happy this fight wound up getting rescheduled. If my girl Jessica Andrade was still in this spot, that would be like the max of all max bets against Manon Fiorot here. I think the line was like minus 110, but we got to wait a few months for that fight to come up with her. But, I think that we covered this one. Definitely not going to be a KP play on this fight since we tend to differ with with our sentiments here. But let's move on to this next fight. This is another banger, right? Taking place in the lightweight division. You have Mateusz Gamrot coming off a massive main event 5-round win over Arman Tsarukyan, who a lot of people labeled as like the next up-and-coming prospect in that lightweight division. Gamrot kind of, had his way with Tsarukyan there, got over on him, and now he faces Beneil Dariush, who was supposed to fight Islam Makhachev last spring, I believe it was, until he suffered a leg fracture, and now he's fighting right behind Islam on the main event here for the title. Another fight here where you're looking at someone who's kind of been gatekeeping this division for a little bit at decent plus odds in Dariush, and Mateusz Gamrot right now is sitting at like minus 190. And, we kind of spoke about this, right? I think that a lot of people, being that this is a pay-per-view card, they're going to look at this fight, they're going to look at the resume of Dariush, and they're going to go, how the hell is this guy plus, 160, plus 170? I'm going to get behind him. So I could see this line kind of coming back a little bit closer to the minus 165 area for Gamrot. But, man, I think that he is such a bright prospect, man. 31 years old. I know he's, 21 and 1. The guy has one loss. It came by split decision in his UFC debut versus Guram Kutateladze, one of Kev's favorite fighters. And, man, this guy, he chases the single legs relentlessly. He has almost an endless gas tank. I think this being a 3-rounder kind of favors Beneil Dariush here a little bit. The one thing you got to be worried about with Dariush is that he will just plod forward. He'll eat your punches just to land some of his own. And when he lands with impact. Gamrot has shown that he has a good chin, though. I think he did get dropped by Garam maybe once or twice in that fight, but Garam, his style's a lot different than Dariush. Dariush does leave himself out there to be hurt. We've seen it in a few fights. I mean, the Drakkar Klose fight always comes to mind, right, where he's basically up against the fence, done for, lands one of his own, and that's all it takes, just presses forward and just absolutely flatline Drakkar Klose. I don't necessarily see that being the case here. I think Gamrot's going to be able to land takedowns. It's easier said than done, though, because Beneil does have, I think, like an 86% takedown defense. I just think the way he chain wrestles and relentlessly presses forward looking for that single leg, I feel like he'll be able to land it. And I'm not too sure Beneil has much off his back to be able to either threaten submissions to escape and get up or land one of his own. I feel like if this gets to the mat with Gamrot on top, he could just control Beneil for 3 rounds. So I lean Gamrot here. I'm not sure about you guys.
Yeah, I mean it's a fight that I love. Gamrot is probably my favorite spot on the main card for a couple of reasons. I liked a lot of what you said. I just think this is a classic case of if you look at the stats and you look at the numbers, it just doesn't tell the whole story. You look at Gamrot, he has a 90% takedown defense and a 35% takedown accuracy. How does that make sense for a guy who's such a good grappler? I'll tell you how it makes sense. He tried to take Arman Sarukian down 21 times. Find me another fighter that can just keep going like that 21 times in a 5-round fight. He is an absolute dog. He is relentless, and his cardio is one of his biggest weapons. And he can keep a high pace for 3 rounds, 5 rounds, probably 10 rounds. Like this guy is just, there's no slowing down. He's all gas, no breaks. And the cardio is going to help him from a durability perspective eat some of those body kicks that Dariush likes to throw and some of those power punches. Dariush is, I think he's going to be probably the side here for a lot of people because of, his track record. You see a guy coming in at plus odds on a nice win streak, but, you look a little bit deeper, he hasn't been very active. And I'll always bet on the guy that's been in there a little bit more often. You just get that familiarity. The other piece, too, is that, Dariush, being a little bit more on the jiu-jitsu side versus Gamrot's wrestling acumen, I have a tendency to think that, if he does get taken down, and, he probably will at some point, but he's probably going to be the one that's going to be a little bit more, accept the bottom position a little bit. Gamrot will not. Gamrot will just not stop moving until he, clinches up to a single leg and kind of reverses that. Arman Sarukian is a great wrestler. He is an absolute great wrestler, and that's why a lot of people are so high on him because he has no holes in his game. But we saw what Gamrot was able to do. Like, he was taking some heavy shots early in that fight, and he lost those early rounds, and he was able to rally. I think you're right. A 3-round fight does favor Dariush here, but I just don't think Dariush is going to be able to keep up from a pace perspective. And if Gamrot has Dariush moving backwards and pushing him up against the fence, I think I can absolutely see a scenario where, he's just constantly going to be hunting for legs. I mean, Gamrot has one of the nastiest single leg takedowns in MMA. It works for him, and his cardio is a big reason why he's able to just push that pace. So, give me Gamrot all day long here. Side note, I mentioned this earlier. This fight's in the UAE, not necessarily the best, the best of relations with Iran, and these kind of sabermetrics, as much as you want to hate them, sometimes come into play here. I think that there's a situational thing that you got to look at where the UFC wants to push Gamrot here. They really do. They see him championship contender, absolutely. And I think Dariush is being at 33, a bit of a broken body. I just don't see it. I think his strength of schedule, albeit he's been in the UFC a long, long time, but his latest run has not necessarily been the most impressive. The competition has been solid, but again, when you can't necessarily take that away from him. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going Gamrot all day here.
No, love the breakdowns, and I'm really glad that you mentioned the BJJ of Dariush, right? Because I mean, you like from the audience, from the public, you look at Dariush, and I think most people probably think of his striking first, but little do they know, he was grappling first, turned into a mixed martial artist. And, off of the 1.5-year layoff. So just something to consider there out of King's MMA. A guy in Gamrot, man, I mean, you guys, there's really not much else to add. I mean, the relentlessness, the way he's able to continue to push forward and have that cardio and more or less, when he's being interviewed after these wins, right? I mean, he truly has the confidence of a champion. And that's something that you truly can't teach. It's just something that comes from within. And it seems like Gamrot really has the tools to at least make a shot at the belt at some point down the road. And when you're betting on a fighter, right? I mean, you obviously want the guy who's going to continue to remain more active, have more paths to victory. I mean, you name it. It just seems like this is Gamrot's fight to lose, you know. But, you know, with Dariush, man, obviously on the 7-fight win streak in the UFC, doesn't matter who it is. It's truly impressive. You know, man, I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to snag Gamrot here, you know, just because Dariush, man, he really does have a puncher's chance. He really does. I mean, I really don't think Gamrot has ever faced a guy as hard hitting as Dariush. And look, Dariush, I mean, look, he's on the layoff at 33, but I mean, I still like to believe that he's in the prime at the top of his game. You know, I mean, he's really not at that age where he's starting to fall off a cliff. He certainly hasn't shown any evidence of slowing down. And it's weird because, you know, you look at Dariush and like the physique and the gray, and you're like, you know, is this guy even like good like that? But man, Dariush really is the real deal. I don't think that this is going to be a scenario where Gamrot just steamrolls to a decision. I really don't. I think it's going to be gritty and close. I think Dariush could potentially win around here. It's just really hard for me to touch this fight just because with the Dariush layoff, I don't really know where he's at. I mean, I prefer to look at the scales and see how he's looking there before touching this fight. But from the grand scheme of things, I'm probably just going to fade this all around. You know, respect two guys so much, and I see a path for both guys. I really do. You know, if Gamrot goes in for a shot and Dariush hits him with a left hook, like it wouldn't surprise me. Like it really wouldn't. You know, Dariush truly is a gamer as well, and yeah, going to be a banger for sure. I mean, Gamrot should win here, right? But I'm not quick to go to the counter on this spot.
I really see a scenario here where Gamrot's going to push the wrestling early and get Dariush thinking of the takedown, and you know, come right back up with like a left hook and crack Dariush. I really see a scenario. People are sleeping on the striking of Gamrot. It's improved leaps and bounds, and you know, you're training at American Top Team with guys like, you know, Dustin Poirier, Jorge Masvidal. I mean, you know, you're going to tighten up your striking. The wrestling is there. We already know that. But I think a lot of people are just sleeping on the striking of Gamrot. He hits hard. He is strong. You know, what he was able to do to Sarukian was truly impressive. I was on Gamrot there. I was on Gamrot by decision. A little bit sweaty for sure, but man, he came out strong. So yeah, glad to see that we're all on that same side. Well, somewhat. Well, I'll convince you, Kev. We'll have a KP player for that.
It's like 2.5 of us on this side.
Yeah, 2.5 is the right number. Like I'm right there, but I'm like, you know, just Dariush, man. He's such a hammer.
I mean, the thing with Dariush, though, it just gives me hesitancy, right? The guy's inactive as it is, breaks his leg like right in February leading up to that Islam fight. We don't really know how long that leg took to recover. And, you know, obviously he's in good shape. He accepted the fight, had a full training camp. He's in Abu Dhabi. I expect him to look great on the scales, right? Just, you know, as you would anyone. But, man, at 33 to go through that sort of injury and come back and face someone with the pace like Gamrot, I mean, Gamrot's just like a little bigger Polish Merab in my eyes, right? I think he's more well-rounded than Merab. I think on the feet, you know, he's a little bit more versatile. He throws kicks, and I think he hits harder too. So, you know, I feel like Gamrot is just very, very well-rounded. I mean, same with Dariush. Both guys really don't have many holes in their game. I think if you want to pick and choose at them, I think Dariush's striking defense leaves much to be desired. Just his willingness to exchange in the pocket, like I said, he will gladly eat some punches to land some of his own. It's a matter of if Gamrot's able to find that spot or not, right? Or if he's going to be able to take those same punches, being gassed, moving on the back foot for about 12 minutes prior. It's a lot to ask because both guys also like to move forward. I mean, Dariush, just look at his fights. His whole style is plodding forward heavy on that front leg. I think that caters itself to Gamrot a little bit. I don't see Gamrot moving backward in this fight. And just by the nature of Dariush's style, I feel like the single legs will be there. He could chew up the leg with leg kicks as well. He's just very versatile at -1. I really, really like Gamrot. I was like this close to putting on money shades for this one, but I'm going to let it slide. I wanted something that we're all very confident in, but I guess we can move on to this next fight, right? This is like the clown show fight of the card here. You got Sean O'Malley taking on Petr Yan. This line has had some movement. I think this line opened up with Petr Yan at like -400, and the comeback on Sean O'Malley was sitting like +330. But where we look now, last I checked, Petr Yan's only -265. It looks like this line has been steamed down greatly. minus 265 in the onside, plus 225 in the O'Malley side. So we're looking at a lot of line movement here. I think a lot of people saw this line, said, you know what, this is a striking battle. Sean is the younger guy. He's the bigger guy in there. Striker first. He has power. So they saw an attractive price on a dog there, so I can't necessarily blame them. But I mean, I think I speak for the three of us. This is a Piotr Jan show here, right? We're all thinking he's going to get the job done. Kev, I know your take on this fight, but I don't really know where Dan's leaning on this. I actually think at one point he was leaning O'Malley. I want to know if he's still, kind of edging towards that side, even with the line being plus 225 now.
And I'm not. No, it's, at hindsight, you take the first look at this fight and you think, okay, well, O'Malley has the length and she's good at managing distance, and we're dealing in a bigger octagon. And so, a 3-round fight definitely favors him. And, again, we see his striking. I mean, his striking is there. O'Malley can give it. He can absolutely be that hammer. Really what kind of the deciding factor in this fight for me is O'Malley's durability. And not to say that, he's, I think a lot of people are kind of overplaying the fact that he kick his legs like he's done. I don't think that's the case. He just hasn't necessarily had that adversity in the cage. And in the small situations where we've seen a little bit of adversity, he hasn't fared well at all, unfortunately. And it's one of these things where it's a huge step up in competition. And if I'm like taking a step back and I'm the UFC, well, I look at this situation here with Jan and be like, well, Jan was this pound for pound goat at a point. Knees Aljamain in the head, loses the title, and then loses a very, very close decision where Aljo landed 0 damage and just rode his back for, the majority of the fight. I think the UFC likes Piotr Jan. I think the UFC is feeding him O'Malley because they feel like, okay, let's go ahead and give him a big name. This guy's had a tough run the last couple of fights, but this is a fight where he reasserts his dominance. What makes Piotr Jan so dangerous is his ability to close distance, right? So it'd be very interesting to see how he fares against a guy like O'Malley, who does great at distance, but especially when he's moving forward. But once you got him moving backwards and up against the cage, all of a sudden his movement isn't quite there. So I absolutely think Jan is going to be able to close the distance and land bombs here. You take, again, the other thing too is from a grappling perspective, I think Jan clearly has the advantage. I mean, O'Malley is training with some, solid guys. Kino Mendez is certainly no joke, but I just, I think you take this fight anywhere and you'll see, who the better fighter is. And it's Piotr Jan. A lot of people love O'Malley. He's a huge name. And that's why when this fight immediately opened, you see huge money coming in on Jan, blowing up to like minus 400 at a point, because now you get all these people seeing this huge number on Sean O'Malley and they're just steaming it, so it's that's how you gotta kind of look at this thing. They want people to bet O'Malley here. They know he's a big name. They know that he's dangerous. He is dangerous. He can land some shots on Jan. But when I look at it again, one of our first guests, Dan mentioned on his show earlier this week, Jan can give it and Jan can take it, but O'Malley can give it. I don't know if O'Malley can take it, man. And that's, for me, that's why I'm leading Jan all day. Nothing official yet, but I know we love Jan in a parlay with Makayev, which is literally free money on this card. But I love Jan here. I really think it's just a matter of they're giving him this name to reassert his dominance in the division. Dillashaw is going to be beating Aljo, and they're going to be setting up what the real championship fight in that division should have been all along, and that's Dillashaw versus Jan.
Yeah, and Kev, before you jump in, I want to touch on Dan's point about people jumping on O'Malley at that big dog price. Think of it. We're looking at a guy who, for his last 6 or 7 fights, he's just steamrolled everyone he's gone against. Granted, we're aware of the level of competition, right? He's fighting Raulian Paiva as his toughest win, and he was coming up a weight class. But you're looking at a guy like this who, one, only fights pay-per-view cards, right? All his fights take place on the main card on a pay-per-view. And then 2, when you're looking at these betting lines of the people he's going against, closed minus 350 versus Pedro Munoz his last fight, closed minus 375. Paiva, he closed like minus 4 something, I think, against Moutinho. And now you get him, he has a tough test here, but like I said, it's a striking battle when you're seeing a plus 350 line and then plus 300, now plus 225. It's attractive to a lot of people. I understand why. I could see the thought process behind people wanting to grab O'Malley at this number just by skewed thought of the market. Just minus 400 time and time again, plus 250. It makes sense. But I think the three of us understand the levels to this. I agree with Dan's point. It's almost like Petr Yan. It's a win-win situation for the UFC, right? If Petr Yan goes out there, he dominates Sean O'Malley, he builds his name on the name of one of the biggest superstars in the UFC, who isn't necessarily top echelon, when it comes to skill and talent, but in terms of marketing ability, it's a huge fight for the UFC to boost Yan. On the flip side, say O'Malley goes out there and wins, right? One of their biggest superstars now has one of the biggest wins in the UFC, right? Beating a guy in Petr Yan. So it's just a huge win-win for them. I think Yan beats him everywhere. I think I agree with you, Dan. The 3 rounds favors O'Malley here because, as we all know, Yan, kind of that Floyd Mayweather type, will take first few minutes of the fight, kind of just to get a feel for his opponent's timing, for what he's throwing, kind of just download all that data before he goes in attack. So maybe we're looking at a situation where you could live bet Yan. I don't necessarily see him coming out slow in this fight in particular, though I feel like he's going to know he needs to push the pace. Kind of what bit him in the ass against Alger, right? If you take time to lose rounds, you're losing rounds, right? It doesn't matter what you end up doing afterwards. If round 1 is a loss, you still need to win the next 2 rounds. I don't see him coming out knowing it's a 3-rounder. I could see a finish in this fight, though. I could see Yan putting away Sean O'Malley. I wouldn't be surprised if Yan takes his fight to the mat either. I think that he's fully capable of doing it. It's just, Dan mentioned it, wherever this fight goes, I see Yan having the advantage. And he closes distance so well that I don't think that this size or reach advantage is going to be a huge impact for the fight.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the line opened at minus 300 and then it steamed to like minus 400 plus, and then it came back down. And now we're here on October 19th, and I'm thinking to myself, like, that line should have kept steaming to minus 500, because the fact that Yan is minus 265 in this spot, like, is truly a clown show. I mean. Like, but let me backtrack. For the record, Sean O'Malley, I mean, bona fide sniper on the feet. Say what you want about him. I mean, the striking is purely crisp. I mean, when you're 8-9 fights into the UFC, you're landing, almost 8 strikes landed per minute at 63%. I mean, I don't care like who you're fighting. Like, with that type of sample size, it's pretty significant. Now, mind you, if you look at if you do look at the numbers, it is skewed by a single fight there a little bit, but there is no doubt that Sean O'Malley does have the striking on the feet. Now, with this length that he has, I mean, I think that it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. With those long legs, Petr Yan, one of the best, kickers, kickboxers that I've seen in this division in some time. So, I think that those front legs are going to be there all day long. I could see a world where O'Malley does kind of make it a really close first round. Yan has landed a significant amount of kicks to that, to that leg, and we kind of see those hands drop. And like you said, Matt, it really wouldn't surprise me if Petr puts O'Malley away here, right? I mean, there truly are levels to this game, and Petr Yan really does have O'Malley covered in pretty much all aspects in mixed martial arts. And I'm truly baffled at this line. I really don't understand it. I think the reason why it's steaming downward is the public sees O'Malley, they see all the videos, they see the hair, the tattoos, smoking joints during training. And it's, I just think that this is a tactic that people are just riding this O'Malley wave. And, mind you, at 27 years old, man, O'Malley can certainly lose this fight, go back to the drawing board, win, 3-4 straight and come back and maybe have a shot at the belt. I think O'Malley does, I don't know, has the tools yet, but I think that he has the potential, to make something happen in this division. But in 2022, it's really hard for me to see it. I mean, Petr Yan really is a phenomenal mixed martial artist, 8-0 in the UFC outside of Aljamain Sterling. I mean, and he just wreaks havoc, man. He's just so dominant, continues to push the pace. I mean, obviously the cardio is in check. And like you said, Dan, I mean, O'Malley, he can give it, but I have questions on how he can take it. And we already know that Petr Yan can be the hammer and the nail. So I think Jan will be able to, absorb the onslaught early by O'Malley, and I think he's going to steamroll. I think he wins round 3 if it gets there, at least 80 to 90% of the time. Round 2, I think he's going to dominate. I just think Jan's got him covered here. I'm probably going to. Nothing's locked in yet. I don't think that this line is close enough for me to just take it straight. So I'll probably end up parlaying Mokaev just because he's a guaranteed lock, and you're getting under -200 there. I'm definitely planning a significant play with Jan here. I'm really confident that he gets the job done. And just studying this card from top to bottom last night, this, like, as much as we may not want to hear this is a very tricky card from top to bottom. I don't think that there's a lot of conviction plays, a lot of conviction spots where we can all confidently say, like, this guy's going to steamroll.
I think that's due to the matchmaking, right? There's so many close fights up and down on this card. I mean, this one, it kind of poses itself as a close fight, but I really don't see it. We kind of saw the way that, even Pedro Munoz was completely able to neutralize Sean O'Malley. Like, I don't think there's a better word to use for that fight. The two of them basically just canceled each other out for the entire, 12 minutes or 7 minutes, however long that fight went. If you can't get anything off on Pedro Munoz, good luck, copy and pasting and getting stuff done against Petr Yan. And for reference, Yan closed at like -380 against Aljo in his last fight, the current champ, who has a glaring advantage over him in the grappling department, right? So to see this line even lower than that against someone like O'Malley, it's like just a chef's kiss on my end.
And you said it perfectly. And it's just, man, I'm definitely treading lightly on this card. Like, I love this card from top to bottom, obviously, but like, you already know that there are cards that we're breaking down and we're like, yeah, no, this is like, there are so many fantastic spots. I have trouble seeing that, and I'm not going to sit here and force anything, but one thing that I will say that on the main card specifically, like, Jan is a lock. Like, and I don't say that like often on stream, but like, he is a lock. He is not losing to Sean O'Malley. Again, Sean O'Malley is still young. It's a win-win for the UFC. I don't envision a world where Petr Yan is facing TJ Dillashaw, but let's ride, baby. Let's ride.
Yeah, and I said before the stream, I was tempted to bring the money shades out for this one, but I'm going to keep them in the back pocket in case something else pops up. But let's move on to this co-main event here. It's probably you could say this is the tightest fight on the entire card. You have Aljamain Sterling taking on TJ the Snake Dillashaw. Dillashaw's coming for that strap, man. I mean, he labels himself the bantamweight GOAT. A lot of people think, he runs that division from start to finish. Dan has a very strong lean on this fight, so I will punt it to him to kick us off.
Yeah, I had this fight circled for quite a while. It's one of those situations where I don't think that, as good as Sterling is, and I'll start there, just kind of talking about how good he really is, because he truly does have some of the best jiu-jitsu in the division, and probably the best back control in the division. And one can make a case even in the UFC. Holding Petr Yan on your back for as long as he did is no easy task. And he knew his path to victory. He knew his only path to victory, because let's face it, on the feet, he was going to get pieced up by Yan. I don't care what anyone says. That first fight, he was getting smoked, especially towards the end. What I liked in that second fight with Yan is that Aljo didn't come out so aggressive as he did in the first one. A little bit more measured and picked his spots a little bit more. And credit to him, because winning that fight, truly did cement him and showed his. He took a lot of shit for that first year after he won that title. A lot of shit. A lot of people on Twitter just talking nonsense that he, not the real champ, so on and so forth. Like, can you imagine? And to come back and win in the fashion that he did, kudos to him. Like, honestly, that is no easy task. I had Yan in that second fight, and he made me, eat my words. And for that, it's one of those situations where, looking at this fight, it does have me a little bit worried, because I think there's a lot of things that you can say about Sterling that gives him the edge here. But the fact of the matter is that, TJ Dillashaw, I think people are just so quick to forget. And rightfully so. He hasn't really done much in the last 3 years. He gets popped for EPO, losing to Henry Cejudo. We've heard some rumblings from ex-teammates that he was on EPO all along, right? So that's I wouldn't put it I wouldn't put it past him. I'm not saying he wasn't. He probably was. I think there's a lot of people in the UFC that are doing that as well that haven't been caught yet. But the fact remains is that Dillashaw, if you look at his track record, the guy has not lost a fight in this division for what, 5 years, 6 years, and it was a razor close split against Dominic Cruz, who at the time really was the top guy in there, and he was another guy that had been out for a long time, but we always knew that he was the top dog, and he came back and he edged out that split decision. I see this as being a similar scenario to that, to be honest, because you look at that fight with Sandhagen, Dillashaw blew his fucking knee out in the first round. Okay, you want to talk about championship mentality. You want to talk about a guy who fights for your money. You want to talk about a guy that just doesn't count himself out in any situation. Dillashaw is that guy. Like, unless you're flatlining him, he is going to be there from start to finish, and very high IQ, incredible angles on the feet, completely multi-dimensional. I mean, he came in as a wrestler, and working with Dwayne Ludwig completely changed his game. And now his striking is probably better than his wrestling. It's kind of crazy. But I just think people are so quick to forget how dominant of a champion he was, especially, losing to Cejudo in the fashion that he did, which, to be honest, I had Cejudo in that fight. I thought it was a bit of an early stoppage, I also think dropping down to 125, he looked like a Skeletor, and your chin is not going to be what it is. Here at 135, we know this is his division. And I think here he really has a chip on his shoulder. The chip on Sterling's shoulder was in his last fight. Like, he had to beat Yan in that fight in order to just, keep his dignity. I mean, really just stand up for yourself, in the words of Alexander the Great, Volkanovski. I love Dillashaw here. I think at plus money, you've got to take a shot at him, just because he hasn't taken any damage outside of that Sandhagen fight in the last 3 years. He's rehabbed, and you look at that picture that he posted on Twitter, like I think yesterday, the day before. The guy is fucking jacked. He looks in the best shape of his life, and I don't usually like betting on older fighters. We have a guy who's 33 versus a guy who's 36, but again, the inactivity of Dillashaw, he hasn't absorbed a lot of strikes, a lot of damage. So I think he's coming in here ready to bang. And, I think Sterling should be able to land takedowns. But I think what I love about Dillashaw is the fact that he can ultimately dictate where the fight goes, right? If he doesn't want to get taken down, he won't get taken down. If he wants to keep it standing, he'll keep it standing. And he's dangerous everywhere. So it's clear here on the feet, Dillashaw is going to be looking for angles. I think he's going to be landing the better strikes. He's going to be landing the bigger combinations. And, if he can avoid getting his back taken, which I think if that happens, he's going to be in danger for sure. But if he can avoid that, I think any other place in this fight, I lean Dillashaw. And I know a lot of people love Sterling here. A lot of people love Sterling against Yan. I just don't see it. So Dillashaw is my dog here. I like it here. I think he's going to be the first 3-time bantamweight champion. And like I said earlier, I think this sets up a Yan Dillashaw fight for the title, which makes so much sense. They're not going to put Yan against Sterling again. Like, that fight has absolutely no value. Dillashaw has like over 1 million followers on Instagram, or versus Sterling like not even 500,000. It would be silly for the UFC to throw away his fan base like that. So for me, I think this is a clear Dillashaw spot.
Love it. I love the conviction. And for the record, man, I mean, how can you not respect Dillashaw, whether he is on the EPO or not? 2-time, bantamweight champion of the world. So you can't take that away from him, man. I remember, first starting off watching UFC and watching Renan Barreal just completely steamroll everybody he faced. I think at one point he was, 31-1. And then Mr. TJ Dillashaw comes around and knocks him out twice in a championship fight. And I don't want to say ended his career, but definitely, provided Barreal with a way of a downswing, to say the least. But, look, with Sterling, I mean, there's no doubt that the BJJ is there. There's no doubt that the grappling is there. I saw a statistic the other day, and it was, Aljamain has landed I think it's 1,100 significant strikes in the UFC. It doesn't have a single knockdown. So that does speak volumes. You know, I think in this particular matchup, Dillashaw has significant edge with the power on the feet. I think that, you know, that damage is definitely going to be there for the taking. You know, Guy Dillashaw, you know, 36 years old. And let me just say this. If this fight takes place, you know, truly in Dillashaw's prime, not just based off of a picture of him looking shredded. I mean, Dillashaw steamrolls Sterling. I really do believe it. But like at 36 off the EPO, the ACL tears. I mean, I understand he hasn't taken damage, but like internally he's had to deal with a significant amount of injuries. It just, it does worry me. It does worry me that he may lose a step here. I'm not going to say that, you know, Sterling comes in here and steamrolls Dillashaw, but, you know, Sterling, man, he's tough to get taken down. You know, and it really just takes one, man. It really just takes one. That length, it really is significant. And man, I looked at that picture with TJ, man, and it does look like he potentially could be back on the juice, man. And, you know, if he is, maybe he just comes in here and dominates, you know. I mean, you guys saw that photo, and, you know, like right under the belt line, you see those little bumps, and I don't know, man, it definitely looked a little fishy to say the least. So maybe he is on the juice again. Who knows? I mean, there's no doubt that he's looking absolutely incredible. And he's going to be ready for this fight, man. It'll be incredible. It'll be absolutely insane if Dillashaw becomes a 3-time bantamweight champion. But
I'll just say this real quick. I think that you look at what the lead up and you know, we've seen like 2 or 3 embedded episodes get released. Aljo's been doing a lot of talking, guys. A lot of talking, a lot of shitting on Dillashaw.
He's building in excuses already, right?
So on. He's been talking a lot of shit, and meanwhile, you see Dillashaw has just been lock away the fucking key. You know, he hasn't been talking, and the few times that we've seen him kind of talk about this fight, like especially, you know, this week, he's completely professional. I love what fucking Dana said, right? He's saying how he respects how Dillashaw handled everything, you know, which I guess it makes sense. But what that tells me is like Dana fucking wants Dillashaw to win here, man. He does not like Sterling. Like, he just doesn't want him to win. Last fight, you saw what he thought about Aljo's performance. Like, yeah, he did what he wanted, but you know,
yeah,
he thought that Petr Yan won that fight. I mean, how often does the big boss come out after a championship decision and say they got it wrong, right? Like, that never happens.
They gave Aljo that, you know, they gave him the title. He won the razor close decision, I should say. But yeah, no, the bantamweight division, it's been, you know, almost 3 years, but the bantamweight division gets put back in order after Saturday.
What did TJ say? Daddy's home, right? I think that's the words he used. But
man,
it is it's such a good fight. You know, Dan, you kind of mentioned it. I agree with you here that when you look at like who has more to fight for in this spot, like I think the easy answer is TJ Dillashaw, right? It's almost like Aljo kind of put everything into that last performance, you know, on the comeback, coming off neck surgery, you know, the whole world against him because he ate an illegal knee, right? It's not like it was his fault. He puts it all into that last fight. He gets the win over Petr Yan, gets over him. And now you have TJ Dillashaw, who for the last 16 months has just been licking his lips, staring at the bantamweight title. I don't care who's there. He's fighting for it. That's his mindset throughout all of recovery. And, you know, the three of us know the power of the mindset is probably the most, you know, empowering thing that you can accomplish, right? And I feel like Dillashaw has that, you know, Dan mentioned that championship mindset. Blow out your knee in the first round of a 5-round fight. Fuck it. I'll fight on one knee and I'll still win on the scorecards. I'll win the minutes, right? It's controversial how the fight was scored, of course, but ultimately he persevered for 25 more minutes and got the job done. Now you got him here. 16 months recovery. You have to imagine that's enough time to get fully recovered and get a full camp in. So I don't think TJ is going to be a step behind. You know, I think that's all I'm getting at. Even in his last fight, he was off, 18-month layoff, came into that. He still looked sharp. I mean, guys on one knee, he still beat the number 3 guy in the world, right? So it's like Corey Sandhagen poses a pretty difficult task, right? I think when you're analyzing this matchup, like TJ has the advantage on the feet. I think without a doubt, his footwork is A1, probably the best in the UFC. He cuts angles. He's always picking you from points that you really can't see coming. On 2 healthy knees, he should be able to get from point A to B, back to C again, just confuse Aljo on the feet with his angles and his attacks. I think offensively wrestling, TJ has the advantage here. I think that he's a better offensive wrestler than Sterling. I mean, look at Sterling's fights. In his last 7 fights, I think he's only landed takedowns in 2 of them. And then if you look at his first Piotr Jan fight, Jan landed 7 takedowns against Aljamain Sterling there, and that's Piotr Jan. TJ Dillashaw is a completely different story when it comes to wrestling. I do think, though, on the mats, Sterling holds such a wide advantage over TJ Dillashaw that's what gives me hesitancy in this fight, because I do feel like Dillashaw can win all the minutes in this fight. It's just a matter of if Sterling can land that top position, can get on the back, because from that point, we can see what we saw in the Jan fight, either 5 minutes of total control without any sort of feeling that TJ can escape, or he could flatten him out, punch him, get rabbit punches, get the TKO, or he could land a sub. I think that all are viable options on the Aljamain Sterling side. So it's that's what makes this one so interesting for me, because I think it's so wide on the mat in terms of grappling that it kind of levels everything else out. Because as I mentioned, I think TJ has the advantage everywhere else. But yeah, this is going to be tough for me to bet on, just because too many question marks surrounding it. If I had to take a stab at it, I'd be tempted on the TJ side at plus 150, but I don't know if I could get behind this.
Yeah, no, it's honestly wild just watching Aljo fight, Marlon Moraes in 2017 get flatlined. Who in the wide imagination would have thought that, Aljo would make this run to be a champion? I mean, it really is a testament to just Aljo's work ethic. Of course, his head coach, Ray Longo, who's, you guys know, one of the best in the business, particularly just with that psychological side with his fighters. But, look, it's really hard for me to bet Aljo. It's hard for me to bet TJ. I'm not going to bet anything at all, but I am predicting Aljo submission in round 3, round 4.
One of the best in between round UFC moments is Ray Longo going to Aljo. Look at that motherfucker! Look at him, Aljo! Fucking just absolutely legendary. But Kev, a month ago you were really you were very bullish on Aljo. And I'm not seeing the conviction here, and that makes me feel good. That makes me feel good here, guys.
I mean, just from a betting market standpoint, right? We have Aljo sitting at minus 185-ish, I think, right? If I'm not wrong, somewhere around that area. Just look at his past fights. I mean, fight 1 against Piotr Jan, he opened minus 120. That's where he was going off at in that first fight. But then you look before that, Pedro Munoz, he was only minus 170 against him. Jimmy Rivera, he was the underdog against Jimmy Rivera. Cody Stamen, he was only minus 170 against Stamen, minus 115 against Brett Johns, plus 130 against Marlon Moraes, right? So, he's not typically in this big favorite spot, and you kind of have to ask yourself, is that a knock on TJ Dillashaw? Is the market just overinflating itself due to Aljamain beating Piotr Jan? Some may say it razor thin, but others may argue that it was kind of decisively that he won that fight the way he was able to control him. So it begs to question the line, I think. I think this opened up around minus 140-ish. I remember seeing that line a long time ago. I felt that was a little bit more accurate. The closer this fight gets, I feel like more money is going to pour in on Aljamain Sterling. You might be able to get a pretty big plus 170 number on TJ Dillashaw by the time the fight goes off.
Yeah, I'm waiting to lock anything in, because I do see. I'm hoping this line goes wide, but I love this fight. I think it's something, people are so quick to forget, guys, especially in this space. People are so quick to forget, and he's going to remind them.
Yeah. No, I wanted to say one quick thing. Personally, I did not forget TJ. I respect the hell out of him, but I do understand that with the layoff, it is easy to let go. But look, with Aljo, I don't think that he's going to be a reigning champion, for a long time. I just don't think that he has the tools to outlast some of the guys that are a little bit deeper into the division. So, if he does get the job done, again, I don't think that he's going to go on this long tear in the career, but should be a fun one, guys. Should be a fun one. TJ Dillashaw looking to make history. So, man, it'll be absolutely incredible. And I don't want to say I'll be happy for him because he did cheat, but it'll be pretty cool to see him be a 3-time champion in this division.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't factor into my thought process that he's 36 years old and he's coming off of a total knee reconstruction surgery. definitely a factor in this fight. You know, if that weren't the case, I think TJ Dillashaw plus money would be a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
But all right, we're pretty split on that one. I think one is decided on Dillashaw, the other one is decided on Aljamain, right? And then I'm in the middle, just kind of flip-flopping as always. But let's move on to this main event. I don't even know if I could like waste my breath breaking this one down, because whatever we say here, we have no clue what's going to go on in these 25 allotted minutes for this fight, if we even need all 25. But you got Charles Do Bronx Oliveira, you know, vacated of his title last time out by the scales in a little hairy situation with the Arizona Athletic Commission, taking on Islam Makhachev, the heir to the Khabib throne, right? Islam currently going off somewhere around the minus 180 area. It's funny because, you know, you get future lines on this fight a long time ago, right? Probably a year ago, we'll say future lines were set on this. And I believe Makhachev was like minus 475 on those early lines, minus 500 on some. And now you see Oliveira rallies off like 2 wins. I think even before the Gaethje, when Makhachev was lined at like minus 300 against Oliveira, Oliveira beats Gaethje first round the way that he did. Line goes somewhere around like minus 230. And then as the fight starts getting closer, starts getting bet on the Oliveira side to the point where now Makhachev, as I mentioned, is minus 190 and Oliveira is plus 160. I mean, if this line movement tells you anything, you should bet the Makhachev side, right? I mean, you had a guy that at one point was the minus 400 favorite. Nothing happened to make him a minus 190 favorite. Nothing on his end that would diminish his stock. It's just, you know, a lot of people love Charles Oliveira, and it's such a difficult fight to break down because both guys have, you know, just real paths to victory. You know, I think each guy can finish the fight. I don't think Oliveira can win by decision. I think Makhachev has all 3 avenues, you know, at his disposal here, whether it be knockout, submission, decision. Oliveira, likeliest scenarios a knockout, submission king. So maybe he'll get a sub on Makhachev. I think that's probably his least likely path. But man, it's tough. I can't even break this one down because I'd be lying if I had an edge on this. I'm going to be watching this fight. I'm a huge Charles Oliveira fan. I'd like to see him beat Islam Makhachev, but in the same breath at minus 190 on Islam Makhachev, we might be looking at this line in like a year or two, be like, how the fuck did we get minus 190 on this guy? I mean, if everything holds up true about the lore of Islam Makhachev, that he really is just as good as Khabib, right? Minus 190 is a steal against anybody.
Yeah, no, I hear you. My goodness, do we have a fight on our hands? Holy moly. I was just looking at history and I was like, man, this is probably the second biggest lightweight bout in UFC history behind Khabib versus Conor a few years ago. I mean, I just couldn't find a fight with this amount of anticipation, with this caliber. You know, this is the first time in UFC history that we have a bout between 2 fighters on a 10+ fight win streak. So pretty cool stuff. I mean, you know, Charles Oliveira, most submissions of all time, right, with 16, most finishes of all time with 19. You know, I was thinking to myself, man, will we ever see another UFC fighter eclipse at least 15 submissions in the UFC? Highly doubtful, highly doubtful. So like, whether you're on the Islam Makhachev on the Do Bronx side, like, you know, put some respect on Do Bronx's name. You know, with that being said, you know, obviously, you know, Khabib's protege and Makhachev, you know, obviously the glorified wrestling is really the main tool in his pocket. Man, this is just such an interesting narrative, right? Because, you know, you have Charles Oliveira, who's considered probably the second best lightweight of all time behind Khabib. Now you have Khabib, you know, his protege facing number 2. So, you know, with Khabib being 29-0, obviously all the UFC fans in us, you know, would love to see Khabib come back and fight Do Bronx once he knocks out Islam. But, you know, I think that, you know, Khabib respects his father way too much, and his religion and just his morals and values to come back, you know, for a 30th fight. So highly doubtful, but man, in this fight, it's so tough to choose a side. You know, I mean, obviously Makhachev has all the tools to end this fight via submission, knockout, decision. You know, we've seen Do Bronx's chin obviously not be extremely strong in the, you know, within his last few fights. This is a tough one, guys. This is a really tough one. You know, I like, my heart and my soul obviously is screaming that Do Bronx is going to find a mark here. You know, Makhachev, man, like he still hasn't proven himself to me yet. You know, I mean, everyone says that he's, you know, Khabib's guy, better than Khabib, but like, and look, you know, Makhachev doesn't have necessarily much control over who he's facing in the UFC, but you know, the strength of schedule is very low. Like, let's pump the brakes before we're putting him in the same conversation as Khabib, right? So, you know, like I said, my heart is telling me that Do Bronx, you know, probably gets dominated in the first round. Second round starts, he somehow finds a knee or elbow in the clinch or somewhere, whether Makhachev's going in for a takedown or something. But yeah, no, I just, man, it's just one of those things, guys. And I know you guys may feel sometimes like this. You just have like a vision, you know, and it just, you just kind of see it, how it portrays out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it does feel like Do Bronx is going to knock out Makhachev here.
Yeah, I actually, you know, after much debate, I'm leaning Oliveira here. You know, I'm leaning Oliveira for a couple of reasons. I think, you know, it's not a strong take because the fact of the matter is that both guys have clear paths to victory, like you mentioned, and I think it's one of those situations where, you know, after this fight, you're going to look back and be like, of course that happens. You know, like it's one of those situations that I think it can go really either way. But if I was a betting man, and I am a betting man, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, look at, you know, where have we seen Makhachev kind of, you know, stumble a little bit? You know, we got knocked out again against Adriano Martins in the second fight in the UFC. Adriano Martins, a 5'10" Brazilian. Well, you know what? There's another 5'10" Brazilian he's fighting tomorrow. And I think in a situation that, you know, Islam is most likely going to be landing takedowns, I see a lot of people on the under here. And to be honest, I actually love the over. I think that this is going to play out. We're going to see Islam, you know, land those initial takedowns. But, you know, Charles is going to survive. Charles is going to be able to get up. And if he doesn't get up, you know, the next round will start. And what we'll see is Oliveira start, you know, messing with Makhachev's body. I think he's going to hit him with some of those knees in the clinch, right?'s going to be doing everything he can to avoid this takedown. And one of his biggest weapons, and we saw that in the Dustin Poirier fight, is those knees to the gut that he just absolutely vicious. And I think as the rounds go on and progress, I really see Makhachev slowing down here. I mean, guys, we've seen Makhachev in the later rounds, but I mean, against who, right? Who have we seen him in the later rounds? Thiago Moises, who's not really a striking threat outside of an overhand, you know. Moises, I don't want to say Moises was having success against Makhachev. He did like land a takedown and then get reversed right away. But you know, after that, you know, coming into that fourth round, it just kind of seemed like he gave up. He gave up on himself, you know, taken down, you know, got his back, and like Makhachev tapped him without having any hooks in. Like it was, I'm just like, it was kind of a bit surprising. I had Makhachev inside the distance there, and that cashed actually a huge parlay for me. So I was very, very happy. But I just think in a situation like this, we're just going to see Charles Oliveira, you know, take a lurking. He'll probably be taking some nice shots on the ground. Wouldn't be surprised even if Makhachev clips him a little bit early. You know, Makhachev's striking is underrated. He's actually a better striker than Khabib, in my opinion. But what we've yet to see from Makhachev is how he handles adversity. We just haven't seen it. We've seen him get clipped once and the fight was over. You can't really take much away from that because it was so early on in his career and kind of like a flash knockout. One can even say it was like a bit of an early stoppage. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But like, I don't see that. I can't really take much away from that. But I know Oliveira can take a hit, and I know he can keep coming. And it's that psychological kind of factor that you think a guy is like right out of there, you're pounding him out, you think the fight's almost called, and he just somehow finds a way to survive. And as the fight progresses, like this guy's still in my face. I can absolutely see a situation on the feet where Oliveira just keeps fucking coming, you know, messes with Makhachev's body periodically in the first few rounds, and we see like a fourth or fifth round stoppage by Oliveira, either by KO or by sub. I mean, again, I'm not ruling that out. If Oliveira grabs your back, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Khabib. Like, you are in fucking trouble. And it's one of those situations where if I look at the path to victory, I know Oliveira can finish it on the feet. I know Oliveira can finish it on the ground. I know Makhachev can finish it on the ground. I don't know if he can finish it on the feet. He can maybe land some shots, but I just think Oliveira's killer instinct here is going to be the deciding factor. And once we see Makhachev start to take shots, it's going to tell us a lot. I think he might panic wrestle, force a takedown, maybe get his neck snatched, maybe get his back taken. One thing or another. I see the championship caliber of Oliveira right now, and he's talking about fighting Volkanovski in Brazil and fighting him in Perth the next month. I mean, this guy's a true savage. But one thing's for sure is like all this can go out the window. I mean, it's one of those fights where after the fight we'll have that like light bulb effect. We're like, oh, of course this happens, but it's not a strong take. But I have to bet Oliveira. I don't think we'll ever see him as a dog like this if he wins this fight. And for that reason alone, I'm going to be taking a stab at him here. Yeah, I think Yan is the lock of the night, and I think we go dog co-main and main here.
That's bold. That's really, really bold. How do you think Oliveira gets it done?
Listen, man, like I said, I think he's going to be peppering his body for the first few rounds. He'll get taken down for sure. He'll survive, and I just think he'll periodically break him down, and it's going to be a late round. It's going to be a late, fourth or fifth. I can absolutely see just he's going to land one shot like in the Chandler fight and just completely turn the tide of the fight. I really see that. Oliveira's stand-up has gotten so crisp. Like he's one of my favorite fighters to watch standing up. His technique is so perfect. Maybe a club and sub, maybe something to just, make Makhachev kind of wake him up a little bit and he realizes, oh shit, this guy's not crumbling like everyone else. I think father's plan goes out the window, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, and you mentioned it that we haven't really seen Islam in any sort of real adversity, right? And it kind of like it's a point I've been making a little bit in the lead up to this fight that Islam could very well be just as skilled as Khabib, right? But at the end of the day, there's one Khabib. Like you can't just copy and paste.
Khabib has a chin.
Khabib has a chin, yeah. But also, like we saw him like get into compromised situations, like the guillotine attempt by Dustin Poirier, and just how calm he remained in the situation. We don't know. Like I could totally see Islam as a type of guy. He gets himself into some sort of danger and he panics. Like we don't know if he's going to stay cool, calm, and collected because we've never seen him as the nail. The one time we've seen him as the nail, Dan, you mentioned, kind of just a flash knockout head kick, right? So it's not necessarily that has anything to do with how he performs in that spot. I feel that there's situations where this fight could go where Makhachev could panic and it could end the fight, right? But at the same time, there's question marks surrounding Charles because in his past few fights, his advantage has been that he could get clipped, he could go down to the mat and recover there, right? And then use that time to kind of threaten you. I dare you to come into my guard right now, or you're going to let me back up. You're going to be, you're going to lose determination because I won't go away. And you have to only beat me on the feet. You can't come to the ground with me. And Islam, I think in this fight, he'll initiate going to the ground. I don't know if that's going to be a good or a bad thing. I think one thing that gives me hesitancy is thinking of that first round with Michael Chandler a little bit, right? How Oliveira had the body lock on him, right? And Chandler was able to reverse the position on him. And Chandler's a good wrestler, right? I think someone with a good wrestling base like Makhachev, Chandler, even Kevin Lee was able to have some success on the ground against Charles Oliveira. And that comes back to just having a really good base, a good wrestling base, and being confident in your submission defense. And if that holds up for the Islam side, then that's what gives Charles problems, I think. So,
well, I'll say one thing on that piece, just sorry to cut you off, but I just think that if you look at Chandler, he's a much more explosive athlete than Makhachev.
Definitely, yeah.
Whereas Makhachev's strength is in his technical acumen and his chain wrestling, but not necessarily like a fast twitch guy like Chandler. And Chandler, if you look at how he got out of that back take, it was through just a massive explosion.
It was pure explosion. I mean? Yeah, you're right. And
so,
Islam's more of the I'm gonna control you type. Like I have very good grips and stuff. So I see your point there. I think there's a lot of question marks on how this fight ends up because on the flip side, this is the first fight in a while where Oliveira doesn't necessarily have to worry about the stand-up threat of his opponent. So he could really let it fly on the feet. So that could be an advantage of his as well. It's, I say time and time again, when question marks are aflow all around the fight, like I can't find the confidence to put my money on something. Kev, I told you after Oliveira's last fight, I said, whatever you do, don't let me bet against Charles Oliveira ever again. So if I ever at any moment in the lead up to Saturday, if I go, I'm considering a Makhachev live bet or something like that, just remind me of that. Don't bet against Oliveira. Yeah, this is just going to be a great fight. The over under 2 is kind of tricky to me because I do agree with Dan. I think that this fight does go over. I think the 1.5 is set at -160. And, just judging off the nature of Islam Makhachev's, fight career, it's probably going to go over that 1.5. I mean, Oliveira's not Bobby Green. He's not Dan Hooker. He's not someone that, Islam could just decide to get out of there. And on the flip side, Oliveira, Gaethje fought that firefight. That was pretty much his only angle of coming in there, finishing the first round. But you look at the Dustin Poirier fight, that went to the 3rd round. The Chandler fight went to the 2nd round. Obviously, it ended early in the 2nd, but I feel like the risk you're taking in this over is just getting to the 2nd round. And, I think that there's avenues for that to hit. But at the same time, I don't know if I have the stomach to bet in Oliveira under at this point, right? Like, it's just great.
You mean an over.
That's what I'm saying, to bet the over. I think I have the stomach to bet the under. That's going to be much easier to ride out because probably every 30 seconds there's to be a finishing opportunity. But betting that over, man, that'll take some years off your life.
Man, if Do Bronx pulls it out, I mean, he will have the credentials to fight for another belt. Because I mean, you look at the lightweight division. Of course, you have the Chandler Poirier matchup. Then you have the Dariush Gamrot. I would imagine the winner of those 2 fights will probably get the next shot at the lightweight belt. But man, would it be cool to see a Volk versus Do Bronx fight? Oh my gosh. That would be like, I mean, that's got to be top 5 most anticipated UFC fight of all time. There's just no argument.
Hey, it'd be like 1 and 2 in the pound for pound rankings going after it, right? But no, it's a great fight. This entire card is great. I think we did a good job breaking down these 5 main card fights. As I mentioned, we're not going to be able to do the Twitter Spaces this week just due to the time constraint of this fight being in Abu Dhabi, starting at 10 a.m. on the East Coast. But as always, the 3 of us will be in the Knights of Degen Discord in the Fight Night channel. So if you're not in that server yet, make sure you join up. The link is on our Twitter. You go to Fight Night KOD. You go to Knights of Degen on Twitter. You go to KOD Media. All should have links to the Discord server. And
by the way, last week, if you guys weren't in that server, we were having an all-time night. I pulled one of the legendary maneuvers that I think I've ever done, where I had a Henry Pietro Rodriguez parlay. Rodriguez wins, and I just had this kind of flash, like Henry being the parlay buster, guys. I pivoted off. I cashed out. I mentioned it. I threw down on a Sunsao. I threw down on a Sunsao decision. Kev, I know you tailed that, and man, what a move, right? And then we had the favorite parlay, Grasso Martinez. And you would only know those plays if you were sitting in that Discord, because I was just throwing them out like candy. So if you were there and you tailed, kudos to you. If you don't have a Knight, if you don't have a Steed, get on it. And those live bets, to be honest, probably outweighed like our KP plays, to be honest. If I'm being truthful, it's one of those situations where you just got to be there.
Yeah, and handicapping this sport is so dependent on market, right? And when you have a card where all the favorites are winning, like at some point an underdog has to win. And like, man, when you mentioned it, it was certainly a light bulb effect. Big shout out to Rafael Sunsao, who, if I'm not mistaken, has beaten TJ Dillashaw and Aljamain Sterling by decision.
Oh,
so he's the true 135 champ.
Stars just aligned perfectly.
He's the true 135 champ. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. UFC 280 this Saturday. Don't miss out, and make sure you join that Discord.
Let's make it rain, baby.